Hello, live from Denver. It is Friday night. Let us make sure. Yep, we're all good in the hood. Hey, everybody, you can see I'm flying a little solo this evening. Welcome to Critical Conversations for 30 July, 2021. Let me get into the right millennium here. Hi, everybody. How are you tonight? Melissa is off tonight. She decided that that would be the best thing for her, and I agree completely. Sometimes, as we know, we get a case of the twisties, and that can happen to the best of us, can't it? So there you go. However, we do have Seven in the house, and we will check in with him in a little bit. First, this is awesome because right literally as I was starting the show, my phone disconnected from the host line of the call-in studio. So I need to make this call real fast. And let's see, maybe I can reduce the volume on it so you guys don't have to listen to it. But actually, I'm going to have to. So we're just going to have to suffer through this together, I think. One moment, please.
Thank you for calling Call-In Studios.
Welcome, Call-In Studio.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
I am entering it now.
Welcome, host.
There we go.
You are now in the
Okay,
host
good.
room and can manage your callers
Back in
from
the
the
host
Call-In
room.
Studio web interface.
All right, good. Hey, everybody. All right, good. So thank you for your patience with that while I set up my line so you guys can call in. Number is 984-214-4154 if you wish to speak with me during this time that we have together today. I have paperwork. I've got stacks and stacks of papers of things. This is all QAnon and conspiracy theory related papers and articles and media that I've been printing out and studying and reading and I'm going to be citing from on my essay work that I am doing. Welcome, everybody. Because I am a little alone, I will be sort of, the pacing will be a little interesting. I'll be going to the comments and to you and to everything else. So, you know, it is what it is. Thanks, guys. And I am sorry that Xion, that Mel is not here today. Okay, yes. Yes, okay. So, hey, Lori, thank you for that. Yeah, so I've got this essay to write, and I've got this next week to get it done before it's due on the 9th. So I will be getting that done. And that's a research proposal type essay on the subject of QAnon, which is why I've got my head in it and why it's so fresh in my mind and why I'm anxious to talk about it with you guys. So that's the update on that. Once that essay is done and turned in, then it is just master's thesis time. And that goes through due date January. So I will have some time to compile, put that together, and I will be, if all goes well, it's not finalized yet, but if all goes well, then I think it's okay I tell you guys all this stuff. It's no big secret. I'm going to be doing the thesis I want to do should concern Scientology sect checking or confessionals versus compare contrast on a historical and methodological kind of context. Compare that with Catholic confessions and other methods of religious confession through the ages and sort of see how Scientology, you know, compares with that and how it's used maybe in a bit more of a controlling fashion and a more, interrogatory sort of fashion than it is for just for spiritual enlightenment or relief, right? Which is what the sort of, the confessional is sort of the mechanism of it is it provides psychological relief for people. But it can be abused. It can be very, very easily abused because it's such a trust thing. So I want to get into that a lot more and see where we go with that. Okay, great. So that's my update on that. And thank you very much, guys, for all of your comments on this. I wanted to say straight away, this was a stressful week for me. I had some ups and downs this week, as I am wont to do. And you guys I really want to validate you again. I really want to let you guys know that you make a difference to me in my life. in a way. I mean, I know you guys, some of you are just internet people. I don't really know you. Some of you I do know a little bit better, but all of you are supportive, helpful to me, and I really appreciate, your viewership. So I just wanted to let you guys know that. Yeah, good old confessionals. So we have a show to do here. Let's check in first with Seven, and then we will start talking about QAnon. There's our little bundle of joyous love, of furry love there, Seven the Wonder Cat. And that you guys are getting, by the way, a little tour of our apartment every week when we do these things. This is our guest bathroom, and this is where he really hangs out a lot. He will sit there on that counter. He will go into the tub. His litter box is in that bathroom, and he just hangs out there all the time, and often in the dark, by the way. I think he likes it because it's probably one of the temperature-wise, I think it's one of the coolest rooms in our apartment, and I think he likes it in there. So anyway, we will be checking back in with Seven, but that's our 7cam update for now. Yes, his safe room. That's exactly right. Hey, Henny. Glad to see you here. All right. Thank you very much, Henny, for that nice comment. Okay, let's go ahead and start talking about QAnon. What is it? What's it all about? I'm going to go in from the very beginning, and I'm not going to assume that you guys know a whole lot of anything about it. How about we do it that way? Rather than assuming specific tidbits or whatever. So Q is an internet personality, is a person who has put himself out on what was on a number of boards. It started on a board. There's an image board or a board website called 4chan. And it comes from the idea of channels on TV. There was a 2chan, then there was a 3chan and a 4chan. And these were image boards. These were places where people could go post memes and share messages. And 4chan has a reputation, or a well-deserved reputation, of being a real cesspool. Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry, I got distracted by the comments there. 4chan has a tendency to be regarded correctly so as a real cesspool. There's anti-Semitism, there's racism, there's misogyny. There's a lot of crap on 4chan. And if you are thinking that, as I used to before I really started diving into this, that platforms like Twitter or Facebook are bad, I mean, they're not even remotely close to the awful that is reflected in some of these other boards or places on the internet. And 4chan's not even the dark web. You can look it up. It's not like it's hard to find. It's got IP address. You can, it's indexed. You're not going to find a lot of the content on 4chan indexed by Google, but you can look it up and get there. And this was followed by other boards. And there's a history to this, but QAnon's not. I'm only telling you about this because this is the place where Q first went to post about the things he or she posts about. And this was the medium, this was the location on the internet where it was decided that this would be where the ultimate truth was communicated about the deep state and Trump as a savior figure. And there's a whole conspiracy theory, which we'll get into. So 4chan is where it started. Then it moved to 8chan, which was another board, which was even looser in its regulations and moderation policies. There are some moderation policies on 4chan, believe it or not. There were fewer on 8chan. And these places were set up to be bastions of free speech, places where you could say anything. And every single person who logs on to these boards, 4chan, 8chan, etc., is anonymous. They have an anonymous name. They don't have to say anything about themselves. In logging in and making an account, they don't even have to provide an email address. They are just who they are. And it's all anonymized. And everybody is assigned a unique ID number, which has got a little code connected with it. And so that's how you know who's who, by number. Everybody's kind of got this special code number assigned to them. And and my phone hung up again. I guess when I get calls in or something, it does that. So I am sorry, guys. I am gonna have to let me reconnect again real fast just to get this done. And if it disconnects again, then we'll have to see what we can see. Sorry, but I do want to enable the call-in for the call-in part of the show. And I really do hate
Thank you for calling Call-In Studios host and call screener line. Please enter your show or meeting number. Enter your 6-digit.
All right.
Welcome, host. You are now in the host room and can manage your callers from the Call-In Studio web interface.
Okay, so getting back to QAnon. When the post started was on October 28th, 2017. And it started on a board called Politics or Poll/POL. And it was in the morning on a Monday. Hillary Clinton, oh no, this is what the message said on 4chan. Hillary Clinton will be arrested between 7:45 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. EST on Monday, the morning on October 30th, 2017. And saw a post, yes, and that the user would later adopt the name Q Clearance Patriot, which was shortened to Q. Q hinted that they were a military officer in President Trump's inner circle. Never identified by name. Nobody really knows who this person is yet. There's been a lot of speculation. The HBO documentary, which I watched, called Q Into the Storm, is all about who is Q, and it kind of pursues that question with vigor. I wasn't really watching it for that purpose, so that wasn't really of as much interest to me as the followers of QAnon and what that mindset is about and what draws people to this. Why is it a magnet for certain people, or how does it interest them? What is it about it that excites them? These were questions that I have, and I still have, and that's the whole basis of the essay I'm writing. But this is the history of it. Now, Q has since that time in 2017 posted almost 5,000 posts. Like a lot. Some days, many posts, then maybe skipping some days. And this has been going on since 2017. I believe there has not been a new post from Q since, I think, December of last year. But don't quote me on that one. Okay. Okay, so this is where it starts. It starts on 4chan, then it starts getting really popular. We're not going to walk through every single step of this, okay? I'm trying to do broad strokes here. But it went from 4chan, which started moderating and was trying to limit some messaging, and Q, I guess, didn't like that. Moved over to a board called 8chan, and there was conflict, which is detailed, in a lot of detail, in this Q documentary. So if you're curious about how these boards operate, who's behind them, what their thinking was in putting these boards together and running them, that is very well documented in the HBO documentary. So that you will get your questions answered about what kind of people start a board like 4chan or 8chan, and why do they do it? And it has to do with ideals of free speech and free speech absolutism. And it was interesting in the documentary how the guy who started 8chan, actually, his name's Fred something. He is this little disabled guy in a wheelchair, and he. Interesting guy, but he said on camera that he came to realize after about 2 or 3 years of moderating and working on 8chan that maybe free speech absolutism was a little overrated, seeing the things that people do with it. And I agree. Of course, this has been a problem, that we've talked about on this show and other places for a long time. Yeah, that's it. Frederick Brennan. Thank you. And Fred's an interesting guy, but I was impressed by the fact that he said that out loud. And he then actually went on a bit of a crusade against his former boss and former who bought 8chan from him, and decided it needed to go down, and he needed to not be connected with anything like that. So that was all documented in the HBO documentary. But as far as Q goes, here is, I just want to read this to you because it summarizes it quite well here. The core of the QAnon myth, and actually I should say this first. QAnon represents a conspiracy theory that is kind of the mother of all conspiracy theories. It's huge. It is all embracive. It has elements of lots of different earlier conspiracy theories in it, because that's actually where it comes from. It's got all these kind of elements of things that were already being discussed on the boards, with anti-Semitism, racism, misogyny. There's a lot of crap on these boards. And I don't use these words lightly. Like, I'm not just like talking out of some like alt-left thing. I mean, we're talking real racism, real misogyny. I mean, really hating kind of speech, like really nasty, nasty stuff. Things you really don't even want to see. I mean, memes and pictures and graphics that are absolutely horrifying. They're all over these boards. These are the worst places you can find on the internet outside of the dark web, where you get into the pedophilia films and stuff like that, like actually unimaginably worse. It looks like the focus is clear to me, so maybe it came back. Sorry if it went out there for a second. Yeah, anyway, yeah, Fred kind of woke up. So, okay. So this conspiracy theory, the basic idea of the QAnon conspiracy theory, if you were to parse it down to, well, what are they really trying to get across? It's this. With the aid of a small group of military intelligence officers called the Q Team, President Donald Trump is waging a shadow war against a cabal of Satan-worshiping, child-eating pedophiles who are conspiring to obstruct and overthrow him. The military will arrest en masse in an event called The Storm. The cabal's membership has grown in the telling. At first, it was many in our government. Within a month, any celebrities who had supported Hillary might well be in on it. A few months later, there were too many to fit into Guantanamo Bay. Later still, 3 other detention centers were being prepped, quote unquote. That's not real, but that's what they were claiming. But it would be fair to say that virtually anyone who's angered or defied President Trump is considered part of the cabal, along with the usual suspects like financier and philanthropist George Soros. After the storm, military tribunals will ensure that these baby-eating traitors are executed or sentenced to life in prison. Faced with overwhelming proof of the cabal's existence, a stunned public will mourn, rage, and ultimately unite behind President Trump, ushering in a golden age of patriotism and prosperity. Okay. Now, this description actually, as it says here, covers none of the most bizarre corners of QAnon. For example, one of the things that is claimed in QAnon is that North Korea is controlled by the CIA, but has now been liberated by Trump and the Q team. It also omits a key aspect of the QAnon worldview, that every public act or utterance of President Trump or a suspected cabal member might contain secret messages, which they call comms, which QAnon believers can decode. And it leaves out one of the most important QAnon slogans, disinformation is necessary, which some might call like me, a wonderful excuse for Q's predictions to fail. Okay? Oh, wow. Thank you, Dylan. Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that. Awesome super chat. Let's get my little thing over here. Yes. Okay, great. Okay, so that's the bare bones fundamental idea of QAnon. But there's so much stuff that piles into this. You might recall an earlier beginning to this, which was Comet Ping Pong, the pizza place, pizza parlor in Washington, D.C., where a man famously showed up who had been so disturbed by what he'd read on these message boards and the conspiracy around Comet Ping Pong, which was a pizza place that the DNC, that the Democrats had purchased a lot of pizza from. And there had been an email dump, an email hack of the DNC and those John Podesta's emails. I think he was the chairman of the Democratic National Committee or somehow connected with that. And these emails referenced a lot of pizza. You know, let's get pizza. I want some pizza, right? And some bright bulb somewhere decided every time that the DNC emails referenced a pizza, what it was actually talking about is that was code for a child, and they were ordering children so they could, you know, rape them and things like that. I mean, this went really crazy really fast. And this all started pre-QAnon on these boards. And a guy actually showed up in Washington, D.C. He was from North Carolina, I believe. And he, yeah, Pizzagate. He went out there with guns. And the claim that was being made at that time was that in the basement of Comet Ping Pong, the pizza place, is where they had a sex dungeon and they were keeping children. And this guy believed it. So he went up there with guns to rescue these kids, to investigate this, to find out about this. He walks in there fully armed, you know, ready to go, makes a nuisance of himself, looking for this basement place, ends up getting arrested, realizes very, very quickly the mistake that he has made when it becomes apparent to him that Comet Ping Pong has no basement. They never did. It was all made up. So this guy ended up in jail over this, right? Cops got called, came out. And this poor pizza place, because of this conspiracy theory and because this got propagated across major media, started getting phone calls, messages, emails, and they're kind of, according to the owner in an interview I saw recently, I mean, the guy's just, you know, fed up because it just won't stop, you know. And they haven't had anybody else show up with guns, thank God. But this conspiracy theory just won't die. Okay, so, yeah, oh shit. Okay, so that is the Comet Ping Pong thing. Now, that is one element of what led to, you know, the anti-Hillary messaging all over these boards. These guys hate Hillary. And they just kind of really love Donald Trump. And so you have this conspiracy theory that is, from an analytical, you know, from an analysis point of view, there's so much going on here. You know, in terms of the conspiracy theory itself, it's what happened is how this blew up. Because you and I'm pretty sure, for the most part, have no idea what goes on 4chan or 8chan at all, nor do we care, right? Why would we go there? Why would we look at that? It's the lunatic fringe of the internet. The very worst people go there. There are boards for neo-Nazis. There are boards for fat shaming. There's boards for anything really awful that you can imagine. It's all there. QAnon is just one of many things that are there. And QAnon itself is actually an amalgamation of elements of things, you know, anti-Hillary messaging, pro-Trump messaging. There's a cabal, there's pedophiles in Hollywood, and, you know, the Jews run Hollywood, and they're all a bunch of, you know, blood-sucking vampires. I mean, there's anything you want to find is pretty much there. So all these elements are already kind of being plowed, and this fertile ground was created there so that Q sort of put it together in such a way that it got a little bit of traction in a way other people weren't getting traction. Another thing for you to know is that part of this picture of what goes on these boards is what's called LARPing, live action role playing. And you might have heard of this term, LARPing. LARPing is where, you know, nerdy people might go out and dress up like wizards and knights and play in the park and act like they're playing a live action, you know, Dungeons and Dragons game or something. That's where LARPing kind of came from. But on the boards, on these message boards, on the image boards, what LARPing means is that somebody anonymously is pretending, or maybe not, but my money's on pretending, to be somebody working in an official capacity in a government organization, and they are sharing or dishing information to the board, to 8chan or 4chan, about secrets that they have anonymously, right? And that this is called LARPing, where there's a guy who was FBI anon, and he was pretending to be an FBI agent, and here's what the FBI knows. And then there was a CIA anon, and there was a few of these anon types who were pretending to be, you know, a military intelligence or military person or law enforcement person. So Q is not the first person to do any of this stuff or even be very original with their ideas. All of these ideas, or a great deal of the ideas that are involved in the QAnon conspiracy, already existed on these boards. And the very idea that you were talking to, or that somebody was messaging on these boards from a government place, is also not new for Q. But Q is the most famous of this, because everything kind of came together in a perfect storm with this. And the way that it graduated from the boards to the rest of the world, where you and I found out about it, was through YouTube. There was a woman, I think Nancy Diaz or something. Anyway, she was a YouTuber, rather small channel, and she echoed the whole Q conspiracy and what it was all about, because a couple people on the boards had gone to her and said, you got to get this message out. We're not getting the message out to enough people. We need to blow this up. So, and those people, by the way, are all in the Q documentary. So it is worth seeing if you want to see who all these characters are. And they explain themselves and why they acted the way that they did. And most of them are absolutely nuts. The people that are shown in this documentary are, you know, as far as I'm concerned, from my clinical knowledge, they're whack, man. These people have their heads really far up their asses, and they believe things that are absolutely positively impossible to be true, but they claim that they are true. So the followers of this are really heavily in delusion land, but that doesn't faze any of them. And it's really so obvious, such an obvious thing about this whole thing that we, you know, don't really even need to comment on it a whole lot. You know, these are people who have all kinds of reasons to believe what they believe. And in fact, that's the actual thing I'm researching, is why do they believe this? So I don't have solid answers for you right now. I just have conjecture as to what it is that draws people to this. There have been many, many studies, which I've been reading, on conspiracy theories and on the proclivity or the susceptibility of people to believe in conspiracy theories. And there are a number of factors at play. Scientific illiteracy is a factor in conspiracy thinking, but it's not, you know, the only factor. It's not just that you don't know anything about science that will draw you to this. There are emotional factors, dispositional factors, and environmental factors as well, to get all technical on you guys. So, so we have to look at all of that when we are talking about why people get into this. They have needs. You know, as far as I'm concerned, from a broad perspective, we can look at people who fall into the conspiracy world the same way we can look at people who fall into the cult world in a lot of ways. And the most reductionist way I've been able to explain in a still accurate way why people fall into this is because these ideas or belief sets and the culture that builds up around them fulfill emotional needs. Okay, people have needs. They feel lonely, they feel anxious, they feel depressed, they feel angry, they feel vengeful, vindictive, they feel victimized. There are a lot of ways people feel that will draw them to trying to understand why the world is this way, why they are this way, what can they do about this, who is doing this to them. Because some people feel that there are no accidents, there are no coincidences, that things always happen for a reason. And that's kind of an important point for conspiracy theorists, by the way, is that, and all throughout, rife through Q's postings, are statements like there are no coincidences, and so there's always meaning being attached to these things. Okay. So, so I think that has a lot to do with, in a general way, why people fall into this. What you don't see in these groups are stable, financially well off, emotionally secure, and emotionally intelligent people. If you're looking for, it's not a guarantee. Anybody can be susceptible enough to get the chink in the armor and start going down the rabbit hole. But you generally don't see people who have things together getting involved in this kind of stuff. There are people who look like they have their shit together who get involved in this stuff. But within about 5 or 10 minutes of talking to them, you realize they really don't. There are issues. And it is those issues that propels people to pursue this and look into this. They don't just, it might be an idle exercise for some people to go down conspiracy rabbit holes and get convinced of the conspiracy. But generally speaking, you are fulfilling emotional needs of some kind with this. Okay, so now what else did I want to cover with this? Yeah, these guys really get into this. But it's interesting how, and I haven't really studied yet exactly which ones or exactly how this works, but QAnon is not just a single monolithic belief. There's a lot of factions. There's a lot of little groups and a lot of little ideas about this. This is not a well unified community. And if you look at where it comes from, you can kind of figure out, well, why would that be, right? These are not people who play well with others. That's how they ended up on these boards in the first place. Is, this is where incels live. This is where the real scum of society end up. And so they don't unify well, but they do unify around certain messages. And one of those messages is that the deep state is active and live and well and is doing everything it can to screw them personally by screwing the whole country over, right? By loss of traditional values, by loss of religion, by there are Christian nationalists who get wrapped up in this, evangelicals who get wrapped up in this. There's a religious component to it. And it's interesting to me to look at the savior figure of Donald Trump and how that parallels the evangelical backing and support of Donald Trump. And the fact that both of these belief sets, both of these ideas are coming from a place where a savior figure is part of the religion. And I'm not bagging on Christianity. I'm just talking about the relationship there and how the idea of that there's going to be a savior, that we need saving, that somebody needs to save us is kind of part and parcel of the whole belief set, which is interesting, because these are people who claim to be very independent operators and they are not. Okay, good. Sorry that I got so wrapped up in talking about all that, I neglected to pick up the calls. So thank you for commenting on that. Let's pick them up. Okay, hello, Nicholas?
Yeah, hey, how's it going?
Hi, welcome to the show. Sorry I rambled on so long and left you on hold like that.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. I mean, you gave me a lot to think about as far as some of that conspiracy stuff. I mean, I grew up listening to Alex Jones, reading a lot of the UFO stuff, all that stuff. And the thing of it with me is like, I'm like, well, maybe it exists, maybe it doesn't, maybe it's real, maybe it's not. But I have to look at logic, reason, and evidence as my three primary, kind of the stable, pardon the Scientology firm, but like the stable data, logic,
Sure.
reason, and evidence. What's the logic, reason, and evidence for this conspiracy? And conspiracies do happen, of course.
Of course they do.
They happen.
Yeah, absolutely they do.
I mean, the minute that I saw QAnon, and I have several people who are in the conspiracy field and the rather what would be considered New Age circle, many of them knew Q to be basically, they thought it was a psyop. They thought it was, and the way they explained it made me think, well, it's almost like a ritual mocking of the victim. You take these people who are too ignorant, too poor, too whatever, to really have the critical thinking skills, and you're just mocking them with, oh yes, here's your savior, Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just absolutely fascinating, because it could be considered mocking of the victim, but then that would beg the question: who are the so-called elites? I mean, do we say the prison industrial complex exists? It's like, at what point do we get to the edge of the rabbit hole? At what point do we say, okay, there's something here, or okay, this is absolute nonsense and it's all a bunch of, schizophrenics just, off their met?
Right.
That's the big part of the problem, because if I'm criminally minded, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if I create a crime scene, there's going to be evidence. So what's my best bet? My best bet is to create such chaos and confusion in that crime scene that the detectives overlook something, that they just don't even bother, that they don't even know what they're looking at, right?
Yeah.
So so instead of just leaving my hair there, I put the hair of dogs, cats, other people, all this other stuff, right?
Sure.
Therefore, there's so much fake stuff that it covers up the real thing. But then again, it's like you can't ever tell what the real thing is, even if there is a real thing.
Well, exactly. And one thing, let me ask you a question though. Can you think of, because I can't, but I'm wondering if you can you think of any good reason or credible reason why a person with high-level security clearance and top secret knowledge would go to 8chan or 4chan to share that and get it out into the world as a credible source,
not.
Right?
Now, albeit, there is an objective reason for them to go there and spread misinformation.
Sure.
If there's actually a UFO documentary on Amazon Prime that debunks a lot of UFO stories that they had back in the 50s and 60s. And it's basically a retired U.S. military person basically stating, yeah, I was hired to create these stories so for the consumption of the public, as to distract from what we were really doing, which were, perfectly legitimate, airplane and military stuff. I mean,
yeah.
I'm trying to think of the name of it. Damn it, I can't think of it. But it's like there's like one UFO thing that was heavily debunked.
Yeah.
Project Serpico or whatever. But it was. I mean, the ufologists are even now getting a lot better at calling out the garbage.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people in every area are getting tired of the garbage. And that's really kind of what's, I'm really hoping that, people really start pushing for more logic, reason, and evidence. Because in my mind, that's what's going to solve the problem.
I agree, man. Well, listen, thank you for calling in and sharing. I appreciate your viewpoint.
Awesome. You have a great night. Bye.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye. Awesome. Yeah, interesting stuff. And then we have another caller here. Let's get right to it. Hello, is this Diane?
It is.
Hi, Diane.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Excellent.
All right. I love that you brought up Pizzagate because I remember myself getting sucked into that a little bit. I was wondering if you're about the Wayfair and the celebrity ordering babies to eat, all of that. Because I kind of went there too. So I just didn't know if you were going to mention that. That was my first question.
Okay.
Go ahead and answer.
Yeah, so on that one, no, I was not going to bring up the Wayfair conspiracy specifically because the QAnon thing is just kind of so all over enveloping or whatever that it kind of takes that stuff into it. But I have read a little bits and pieces about something about Wayfair and that being a store or place where you can order kids from or something. Is that the gist of it?
The full rabbit hole.
What? Is there more?
Yeah, and prices and their website. Again, I'm not even going to go there. But
right.
Okay. If you ever want to cover all that, that would be kind of cool because, yeah, there are many rabbit holes, especially during COVID year, that we all not all, that a lot of us kind of went down.
Understood.
But
yeah.
my other thing, it would actually be really beneficial maybe if you presented who created QAnon as far as you know and why, and can both sides make an argument? Because I'm just so confused. If this is all fabricated, where was it coming from?
Sure.
And
sure.
I need to, yeah. Yeah. So
well, let me first say, if I could respond to that, Diane, because I think you might. Have you checked out that, or do you have the ability to check out that HBO documentary?
No, I do not have HBO. I have no cable.
Okay, fine, no worries. Because that question is actively pursued for 6 straight episodes, and there is no finalized answer on this. There are people who are claiming various people are Q for various reasons. There's sort of a list of suspects. And Roger Stone could be one. Steve Bannon is another one. Michael Flynn, General Flynn, right, is another one. A guy named Ron Watkins.
But the more important question is why? Who?
Well, see, depending on who it is would change up why they're doing it. Because you could have, right? You have ideas that it could be trying to rally support and create an army for Trump. And you have General Flynn running around right now talking about, and for years now has been talking about how Trump has a digital army behind him. And this is who they're talking about, our QAnon followers and supporters. And these are the people who in the real world, at least these are part of the people who in the real world on January 6th stormed our Capitol, right? I mean, exactly per their conspiracy. So there's a real world element to this where that could be one motivation for why you would want to unite these people around a conspiracy theory like this, is because Donald Trump, as no longer being president, doesn't have any force behind him. And without that, you're not going to succeed in any kind of revolutionary action, right? So that's one idea. But it could also be that the guy who runs 8chan, named Ron Watkins, is the guy behind Q, and he's doing it just to mess with people. And he likes Trump, but he's not, who knows, right? Or it could be that they're working with the Russians. That's been forwarded as an idea.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many.
So there's,
so we'll leave that. Yeah. Let's just leave that. Here's my next worry problem. Today, I just got notified from HR. We all start wearing masks again.
Yep.
And when I reached out to people, I heard repetitively, well, if people did what they needed to do, and I thought the thing going through my head was, here we go again, and we're causing more separation. what is this? Is this another way to separate and divide people? Like,
you mean, are you referring to the controversy over whether masks are necessary or not as some kind of a propaganda?
Yeah, it's like reamping this all up. Like, okay, now we're going to separate not the mask wearers and the non-mask wearers. We're going to separate the vaccine people and the non-vaccine people. And I'm like, where is this coming from? Like,
yeah, you have a number of factors there, actually. It's not one place that it's coming from. And I think that's one of the reasons why people get really confused about this, is because it's not just one place. It's not a psych op or something, you know. We have a pandemic going. That's a very real thing. And yet we have a number of places documented. We know this is true, that China, Russia, and elements within the United States all post stuff all over the internet about how bad vaccines are, about how bad masks are, about how the whole epidemic is a hoax, and that those things are done as psyops. Those things are done as propaganda operations in order to sow division and conflict into our society. That absolutely is a thing. But it's not the only thing, because there's also people who very sincerely believe, without any of that, that vaccines don't work and that there are problems and don't trust it. So you got a couple things going on there.
Yeah, a lot to think about.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, it won't get all in. I got to let you go. I'm getting another call in. I love you, Chris.
Thank you. Thanks for calling. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
All right, cool. Hope I didn't put too much down there, but yes, that's the thing, is there isn't always one source for things, especially stuff this vast and this wide. I mean, there's all these actors, and some of them are good actors, and some of them are bad actors. And they all throw into this mix. None of this is coming from a single place. In fact, one thing you guys should know about QAnon is there was a certain point where Q changed. Like the style of writing, the punctuation, the formatting changed significantly. So there was a point where it looks like somebody else took the helm of Q. And it might well be, and this is kind of along the lines of what I think, is that there might well be a team of people who have been behind this Q thing. So it might not be just one person. And if we, try to find who it is, when in fact it could be multiple people, then we might, be not very accurate. One thing that I haven't, Xenu, seen is I have not seen any reference to the Fifth Invader Force in any of this, in any of Q's nonsense. Okay, let us check back in with 7, because we have not done that in a while. There he is, still sitting there, still enjoying life. Like I said, he will do this for, just hours at a time. He's pretty chill that way. All right. Get your fill of 7. I do love this kitty. It's all Melissa's fault. She totally made me fall in love with that cat. OT7, that's right. OT7, I love it. I just now got that. I think you've said that a lot of times, but I just now got that. Okay. We have another call in, and I'm not going to ignore this one. So let us just pick it up. Hello, you were on the air.
Fortune. Oh, hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to share a real life story from 4chan, 8chan, one of those two.
Yes.
Because you were emphasizing how awful it is, and I thought, maybe an anecdote from real life might.
Beautiful,
underline
please.
That?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So, I heard this from a friend, but then I confirmed everything online, and I was pretty shocked. But she was saying that she knew a guy who'd gotten caught because he was a photographer, and he took a lot of photos, especially of women, and there were some nude photos involved, and it was always like, these are just, these are contracted photos. They're never going to go anywhere except for on this particular site. They weren't even like, it was just like some random local site. And he was apparently sharing those photos on 4chan and also doxing the women.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, and he didn't think it would come back to him, even though he's the only one who had access to all of those women's photos.
Yeah, I didn't really think the thought through very well, did he?
Yeah, because that's how he got caught. Because it was like, that's the only time I did that, and it's like, okay, well, there you go.
Exactly. Excuse me, who took this picture? Right? Oh, this guy did. Huh, I wonder where that picture came from. Yeah, exactly.
I think even they started messaging the other girls and being like, just so you know, he's sharing the photos and stuff like that. It was like, yeah, I was shocked. But yeah, that's a real life story.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for that anecdote. That's exactly the kind of thing that goes on. And that's actually fairly tame compared to some of the stuff that goes on these boards. I tell you, man, these places are nasty. Well, thank you for that.
I mean, I'm not, yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Did you have more on that?
No, I'm all good. I'm going to listen to the rest of the show. Have a good night, and I hope Melissa feels better tomorrow.
Me too. All right. Thanks for calling.
Bye.
All right. Cool call. Yeah. I just can't stress enough how bad these boards are. And one of the things about these is that, one of the things about these conspiracy theories is, the most obvious questions never get asked by the people who fall for these things. Like, for example, why would a high-level military intelligence personnel go to 4chan to share deep state information that he wants to spread to everybody? Why would you go there, of all places, to share that, deep state information? I tell you, man, but it's grown now to the point, by the way, where it has outgrown those origins. I mean, now it's on, it's been banned from almost every mainstream social media platform. Facebook, Twitter, Reddit. You can't get into, you can't start QAnon boards or QAnon Facebook pages and expect to be there for very long at this point, because the information that they have been spreading, the lies and the nonsense, and the real life organizing that they have been doing on social media to organize events like the Stop the Steal event, which turned into the January 6th insurrection. Nobody wants any part of that, right? That's treason, and that's really bad. And we shouldn't be putting things in place or allowing people to organize to do things like that, because that's just not very good for our country. So there you go on that. Yeah, exactly. As X-Science says, symbolism is really, really, really key with this group. And there's all kinds of symbols. There's all kinds of memes connected with this and stuff. It's a real all-consuming kind of thing. And some people really get into this. And we really barely got into I'm sorry, we barely got into the mechanics of how the conspiracy theory spread. But it went through YouTube, and then it started blowing up. And one of the things that's so interesting about the structure of this whole conspiracy, which I'll kind of leave you with, and maybe we need to do a part 2, I'm not really sure yet. If you guys have questions or things about this you want me to elaborate on or go into more, we can certainly do another episode on this, another show on QAnon. If there's parts that I haven't, covered or gotten to at all yet that you want to know about. But what I will say is that it's so fascinating how there has formed around these Q drops, these messages that Q was leaving. Remember, there was almost 5,000 of them. They're very cryptic. So a number of people started naming themselves or started emerging from this community and from YouTube as Q translators. And they, what's the phrase for them? Bakers. The Q crumbs, see, Q drops are these messages, and they're very cryptic. And so there's these breadcrumbs, these clues, these obscure little tidbits inside the drops, and the bakers, the translators, are not Q. They're people we know. And there's about, I don't know, 5, 6, 10 of them or something. And these guys are members of the community who actively participate in the creation and dissemination of the QAnon conspiracy, because they take the drops and say, oh, well, and they puzzle it all out. And they interpret it to mean, oh, he must mean this. And they're connecting it to real world events, whether past, present, or future. And using these interpretations, the community sort of group thinks them into reality. Oh, that must be what he meant. Yes, that's it. That's the proper interpretation. And then it gets logged as this official sort of interpretation of what Q actually meant. And then then people go looking around to find evidence, which are called Q proofs, that what Q said or predicted would happen actually did happen. And so they connect these things to very, very obscure, weird, minutia kind of events, not always big, bright events, sometimes very, very small things, but there always has to be some kind of connection. And if Q visibly, noticeably, obviously mispredicted or got something wrong, we just forget about that. We don't talk about that anymore. And they just go into denial on it. But I wanted to mention that because this makes Q different from other kinds of conspiracy theories. It becomes an interactive game. And I wanted to really, I wanted to get to that a little earlier than now, but this is an important aspect of how this thing propagated. And why it has so much interest from the people involved is it's an interactive game. He drops the Q drop, and then these bakers get to it, and then they publish videos saying, well, here's what he meant. And then the community basically votes as to which interpretation they kind of like. It's not a formal process, but this is kind of how it's evolved. And then that's the new reality. And reality is constantly reshaped and reformed around these Q drops in this paradigm of this Donald Trump savior conspiracy. And that's the Q phenomena. That's what's going on with this thing. So it's different from flat Earth or other 9/11 truther or other kind of conspiracy theories because of this interactive element. And I think this is actually crucial to how Q grew, is because it gave everybody a role. It gave them identity. It gave them meaning. And they were somewhere in the hierarchy of the Q organization or the Q movement. And that's how it became something that I think is even more meaningful for the people who are involved than even these other all-consuming conspiracy theories like Flat Earth or 9/11 Truth. So that's an element of this that I think stands out and is worth noting. And in fact, some people have even posited or put forward that Q is really just some big LARP, some big live-action role-playing game, and it's really nothing more. I'm kind of looking for that article right now. I don't see it here, but that's really all it is it's just some big game. But clearly, with January 6th having happened and the other violent things that have happened, because I didn't get into the other real-world things that have happened, but there have been other incidents like Comet Ping Pong. There was a guy who showed up on Hoover Dam and shut it down for a few hours with guns because he was involved with some aspect of this Q conspiracy, and he was there to kick ass and take names or check something out. There have been other real-world instances. I think there was something in California where, a school got shut down over somebody called into a school in California. I think it was Green River or something like that, and the Grass Valley Charter School in Northern California. Okay, 500 students. they got a call one day saying, hey, I'm not calling in a bomb threat right now, but I think your school is under attack or is going to be under attack because of this interpretation of one of the Q drops. And it was a translation or interpretation of one of James Comey's tweets from a QAnon person using QAnon methodology to translate James Comey, because James Comey, the former director of the FBI, is clearly part of the whole conspiracy. One, because he works for the government. Two, because he spoke up in favor of Hillary. So clearly he is a child-eating pedophile. That's kind of how they think on this stuff. So that game aspect of this is noteworthy, and I think is part of the reason why this activity retains people, keeps them there, keeps them going better than some of these other crazy conspiracies and groups that people can get into and then kind of blow out of just as quickly once they kind of come to their senses. This thing propagates in a really weird way where people are interactively involved in it. So it becomes more than just something they're reading about on the internet. And when you get people involved like that, you're taking it to a whole nother level, right? And their willingness and their desire and their feeling of need that this is real and that this is something they've invested in and that they're connected to, that is gold as far as a cult leader is concerned. And I'm sure as far as Donald Trump is concerned, because he has used this whole thing to his advantage in pretty gross ways. So that's what I can say about all that. And we have reached 7 o'clock, so I think I'm going to start wrapping up now. I really only covered a fraction of what I hoped to cover. I'm sorry, guys. I've been talking as fast as I can, but there's a lot of stuff here. But I think I've given the basic idea of what QAnon is, why I think there's something a bit off about it, where it comes from, how it's structured, and why I think it retains people. And so I don't know. I think we covered some good stuff here. So let us end with our cards, because I need a palate cleanser right now. This stuff is nasty, man. Nasty, nasty, nasty. Now done. Oh, okay, good. Yeah, this will be appropriate. So what we're going to read tonight from my card deck of logical fallacies and biases, bad ways that people think, is your bias is belief bias. If a conclusion supports your existing beliefs, you'll rationalize anything that supports it. I believe that we see belief bias all throughout QAnon. It is difficult for us to set aside our existing ideas to consider the truth merits of an argument. In practice, this means that our beliefs become impervious to criticism and are perpetually reinforced. A useful thing to ask is, when and how did I get this belief? So there's some advice there about belief bias. Don't let yourself get caught up in that. Always question. Always give yourself time, especially on important decisions. Never, ever, 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 ever let somebody tell you you don't have the time to make a decision. Again, especially important ones for your life. Give yourself, the ability to let your frontal lobes kick in and really think the whole thing through, and you will avoid an awful lot of bad decision making. So there is a little bit for you there. Okay, so yeah, perfect card, exactly. Okay, guys, so that's our show for this week. We have a podcast that I recorded today going up tomorrow that I think you guys are really going to want to see. It is all about Scientology. It's Scientology stuff, and it's another in the installment of my series with my friend Cyprian over Scientology organizational craziness. And this has to do all about how Scientology and how the Sea Org handle personnel transfers especially. And I go into some pretty crazy stuff that you guys have never heard before. Okay, so you're definitely going to want to check out this podcast. Nobody ever talks about this stuff that we talk about in this podcast, so I think you guys will enjoy that. We touch on the org chart a little bit, but mostly we're getting into the personnel policies. So you'll see that tomorrow, and then we will do a regular recorded Q&A on Sunday. All right, guys, thanks for coming around. Thank you very much, Dylan, for that super chat, and I will wrap up now. Yeah, okay, good. Bye-bye.